Alright, so this is my first go at documenting on what I read about Emma. It is backwards for you guys. But it's basically on the first 3 chapters that I read so far, I gotten a lot of goodness out of it. And I can see exactly where she compares a lot how it's compared to Pride and Prejudice. A lot with the character Emma, how in the beginning we see how she's very prideful for herself. Um, she takes too much to satisfy herself and her needs than anyone else at the time. This beginning, so it seems a little more like you can compare it to an earlier Darcy, Mr. Darcy from Pride and Prejudice, who at the beginning was very prideful, and standoffish a little bit. She's not that much, but Emma's seems to be just like, I'm gonna do what satisfies me to help others. It'll still be helping others, but it's in her own satisfaction to glorify herself. And a good quote that went along with that, I actually found it on the first page in chapter 1 while reading it, and goes to be the real evils indeed of Emma's situation were the power of having rather too much her own way and a disposition to think a little too well of herself. These were the disadvantages which threatened alloy to her many enjoyments. The danger, however, was at present so unperceived that they did not by any means rank as misfortunes with her. So that explains a lot on how like she thinks too high of herself, and she does and really perceives that it is possible to have too much of one's own way, or to be too satisfied with oneself, which what I think to believe is gonna be the like structure of how the book's gonna go. Is probably gonna show how she changes through this, how like maybe she becomes less prideful and more to have an equality between satisfying herself and someone else. I'm just waiting to see if I can find out until I see that one person that actually brings that out in her. I don't think we found him yet. A lot, but like, just to start things off, a lot of what really happens, because I read the first 3 chapters. In the first chapter, it was more of we get her introduction. We realize her sister's, whose name is Isabel, is married off, and then there's one figure who's Miss Taylor, who in the first chapter seems to be very important because she took the motherly love position compared since Emma's actual mother had died and she didn't really know that much about her, so she didn't really care, but that's why she attached herself to Miss Taylor. And then and this all oops, I'm sorry. This is all within the first chapter, and it seems I missed that she's really gonna miss Miss Taylor, because just in the beginning we get to see that Miss Taylor is getting married by Mr. Weston, and they have left, so now there's just Emma and her father, Mr. Woodhouse, in the place, to where the only thing she can find comfort in is talking to her dad, which isn't really a bad thing because I love talking to my dad. And then it says how she yeah, how her father really doesn't really like change. It seems like that's gonna be like his reoccurring theme or care personality. It'll probably just be like a Mr. Bennet who and Mrs. Bennet who just have their own key role, and it's like for his it's just like, oh, something changed, I don't like it, like the fact that he's like, oh, Miss Taylor got married, now she's gonna be gone, now there's just a change, it's just gonna be me and you here, there's no one else gonna be real here. And then it seems that towards the end of that chapter, you see that Emma tries to take more of the courtesy for how Miss Taylor met him, and then the character of Mr. Knightley brings out the jokes of him, saying how like, oh sure, Emma takes too much pride in the marriage way. So and then it ends with like a lot of Emma's declaring that she's gonna help someone else in her matchmaking skills. And then chapter 2 I found very interesting because it was like a lot of background, not necessarily for Emma, but it's a background for Mr. Weston, who is now is a not Isabel, Miss Taylor, his husband. And we get a lot on how they had his first marriage was to a high class woman, a higher class than him, which is a little unusual, which was Miss Churchill, and their son Frank, which actually the marriage was overshadowed by the disapproval of Mr. Weston's brother and sister-in-law, Mr. and Mrs. Churchill, who were like the heir for it. So, and a lot of like bad expectations, which is probably a little bit of his first impression of Mrs. Churchill, that he might have gotten money, but now he had to spend 20 years just to regain his fortune. And then how that one ends is practically like, which is just me revising everything, which is interesting because it was just like, oh yeah, now their son's deciding to go visit his father and new stepmother, which I find is curious because I want to know, oh really, how this is actually gonna go out. Is it gonna be a bad thing? Is it gonna be a good thing? Or is he gonna like his son? Or is he gonna be like, why the hell are you here? So, and then I ended off with chapter 3, which is a little bit short, but it was in a way fun to read because we get introduced to a character, Harriet Smith, who Emma comes to admire just because of her beauty and her respect towards her and Hartfield. So it's like, hey, you're nice to me, so I'm gonna be nice to you. And then she just goes to pursue the friendship. In fact, just so like she doesn't have to deal with other things, which is weird because like it's like, why are you gonna take this lower class girl, try to make friends with her? It's like there's something mysterious going on with Emma. It seems like it's another one of those things that she's gonna be like satisfied for her own needs. Hopefully not, but that's pretty much it. And on that, I don't know, I can see a lot of pride in the comparisons between it, because a lot of her writing, she gets descriptive on some things but not impacted a lot, and more towards the beginning it's a lot of limited in first person, because like they would talk but then you don't really get that much of Emma's thoughts, Mr. Woodhouse's thoughts. It's just like the generalization. That's pretty much I got here.